One, two, no. Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I'm Emmy Wildwood.
And I am Erin Mars.
And today's first episode where we talk about artists, musical artists in movies, we are going to talk about Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy. All right. So, Emmy, this was your pick.
This was my pick.
This was your pick. So let's talk about why was this your pick? What made you drawn to venturing into and revisiting this classic film?
So I wanted to start with Dick Tracy from 1990 because it stars Madonna and Warren Beatty. And Madonna was like, one of my favorites when I was super little. I would say I danced to, her music on tape, on cassette tape, and possibly even vinyl. Dick Tracy was a comic book. And so I think as a kid, it appealed to me because everything's like super cartoony. It's like real life, but like it's all been designed to look like a comic strip. So the shots are super exaggerated, super dramatic, sort of comic book shots, close-ups, and you really feel that the whole time. I mean, you can like totally tell. You feel like you're living in a comic strip. Created by Chester Gould, Warren Beatty produced and directed and starred in the film. The cast is nuts. It's so good. It's Al Pacino, Madonna, Glenn Headley, Charlie Korsmo.
Yes.
And there's amazing appearances, iconic appearances by Dustin Hoffman, James Keane, Charles Durning, William Forsythe, Seymour Castle, Mandy Patinkin, Catherine O'Hara, Edo Ross, James Caan, James Tolkien, and Dick Van Dyke. Kathy Bates is even in it.
Like the cast list alone is insane.
Right.
It's insane. Just
right. And the music
opening credits was like, wait, what?
Yes. And the music is by Danny Elfman. So it's like an amazing cast, an amazing soundtrack.
Yep. He's basically the composer, I think, that Tim Burton has almost exclusively worked with. I don't know if he's worked with any other composer. He's
Edward Scissorhands, all
the Tim Burton movies.
Yeah.
And Danny Elfman also is super cool because he used to be in a punk band in LA for a long time.
That does not surprise me.
He's a super rock and roller dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Madonna wears, which are black satin gowns, silver sparkle gowns and rhinestones, to the suits that the gangsters are wearing.
Yes.
Which are like all these bright colors. And Dick Tracy's super infamous yellow suit. Yeah. Basically, what makes this movie special are a few things. One, Madonna singing music by Danny Elfman was pretty magical. Her performance is really cool. While her character is a nightclub singer.
Yes.
And they could have taken the songs and made them super generically 30s or sound, and they have that feel, but really it could be like a song Madonna sang. She didn't put on a voice. She was really just herself, which made you believe the character more.
Yes.
And the music is just so good. It takes place in the 1930s sort of Chicago setting. And you can tell that it's Dick Tracy who's lead detective, who's trying to nail down all these mobsters sort of based on the Al Capone vibe. And they are this big boy Caprice is this character played by Al Pacino, and he has it out for Tracy, and Tracy's not gonna let him get away with it this time.
Yeah.
So Tracy's dating this lovely little redhead, Tess Trueheart.
Yes.
Yes. And
it says it all.
Right? I love it.
True heart.
I love that she was a redhead too, because like redheads are always bad girls in movies. Do you know what I mean? It's like Jessica Rabbit, like, they always have like some sort of like seductive, witchy, evil, fiery. So I was like, there's a redhead.
Sure, yeah.
It was nice, but also she's tough as the movie goes on. She's not afraid to tell Tracy like what she thinks. She's not like begging him for a wedding proposal, though maybe she would like it. She's crazy about him. She's not like she's like, he's always like, I've been thinking about us. And she's like, I'm fine living alone. She's not like, like she's an independent woman. Yes. So Dick Tracy's trying to catch Big Boy Caprice, who is difficult to nail down, and has it out for Tracy. Madonna makes her entrance as a nightclub singer and as Breathless Mahoney in a black satin dress, which is amazing with buttons up the whole back. Clings to the body like magic. Black buttons all the way up her dress.
Yeah, the costumes are absolutely gorgeous in this film.
Costumes are insane. Yeah. She's dripping in rhinestones the entire time.
Yep.
And she's got like sort of a Marilyn-esque, what's the Marilyn movie where she's
Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend.
Diamonds Are a Girl Best Friend vibe. She immediately has her eye on Tracy and wants to steal him away from Tess Trueheart. So she immediately is like laying it on thick and batting the eyes. And I mean, she's being full Madonna right off the bat. She is giving Madonna. There's this other character, the kid. The kid is like a street rat who's living with his dad, who's like knocks him around, and his dad makes him go out into the street and steal for him and comes back. And the kid ends up trying to steal a watch from Tracy, and Tracy chases him down and essentially sort of like rescues him from the slums and takes him under his wing. This is important because it seems through the whole movie that Tracy's sort of torn between this family dynamic he's building with Tess and the kid and Breathless Mahoney, who's essentially seducing him at every turn. This movie's got a little bit of the ye old switcheroo in it. So while you could
the old switcheroo.
The old switcheroo.
Oh, bait switch.
Right. Yeah. A little bait and switch. So while you think it's about Tracy and Big Boy Caprice, this twist is thrown in when a third sort of independent contractor character, and Tracy believes that Breathless Mahoney is the key to nailing down Big Boy Caprice, but really it's this mystery character, the Faceless Man.
Yeah. Next to me, I have one of my favorite film books, Shot by Shot.
Yeah.
And there's like a few scenes that they do, like that they set up shots here. And I don't know if this is going to show that they do quite a few of these like trick shots that I think like help with like emotion in certain things, but the chemistry between Madonna and Warren Beatty. And what's funny to me, okay, so this film came out in 1990, right? Yeah. I think it was like 2 years later, or maybe a year later, Warren Beatty comes out with this film Bugsy, which is also a Chicago-y, like gangster film based on Bugsy, like whatever. And in that film, his love interest is Annette Bening.
Oh.
Who he then marries and has children with.
Oh.
Okay. And so what I think is really funny is when we're watching that dynamic between Madonna and Warren Beatty, and I agree with you in this, he seems almost kind of annoyed with her.
Yeah, with Madonna.
Like that's their real relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
And it makes me think like, oh, he's with this woman and she's sexy and she's getting attention and all this stuff. And like Warren Warren Beatty had a reputation as being like this huge playboy, that he dated like every Hollywood starlet there
I
was.
honestly don't think I knew that. I don't
Oh,
think I knew he was a
everybody.
playboy.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah. Carly Simon wrote the I'm So Vain song about him. So this
What?
guy is, yeah. So this guy's like this super machismo guy. And he's used to being like the handsome, flirty one in the room, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
And then he's got this girlfriend who's like, I don't think so. I'm freaking Madonna. And
Right.
it's like, oh, at first that's kind of got to be fun. And then it gets to a point where he's like, yeah, I'm kind of more comfortable with the dynamic like where I'm the pretty one, you know?
Well, it's funny because
And that's no
he's
dig on Annette Bening, by the way, of
no,
about
no.
her not being beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like the flashiness of Madonna, I think a big personality, and you
Yeah.
have another big personality. Sometimes that can be tough.
You can see that yeah, he's sort of annoyed by her. You're right. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
there's a sort of like the dynamic feels real, is what I mean, which is that she's constantly,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, s- putting her body all up against him. She's dripping all over him and he's annoyed
Right.
by it. You know what
Right.
I
Right.
mean?
Right.
She's
Right.
clingy and always seductive and it's like you can see he wants her to just do what he wants her to do. In Madonna's famous documentary Truth or Dare,
Which came out
which
right after Dick Tracy.
right after Warren Beatty makes an appearance in it and the documentary documents them sort of having a fight. Like it sort of looks exactly like what's going on in the movie. He's like annoyed by her and she's like just finished her show and she's wearing her cone boobies, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like, why am I dating this woman? It's like he feels like the whole thing is ridiculous. So I mean, sometimes those people are attracted initially to each other because of their powerfulness, but like
Right.
when it really comes to it, it's like clearly they both wanted to steer that ship and they were battling for, you know.
Right. Well, I
It,
think you got to talk about how Madonna, Breathless Mahoney, falls in love almost immediately with Dick Tracy because he's the best looking man in this movie where every bad guy has weird prosthetics on.
well, that's true.
Every
So,
guy has like a mask of ugliness to make sure the audience really knows who the bad guys are. They're
yeah.
all like, wah, wah,
Well,
wah.
they're designed to look just like their drawings. So, and
Yeah,
what I
it's
love is
crazy.
all of their names are what they look like.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
what their little, you know, kink is.
Yeah.
That's not the word I meant. But like Mumbles is my favorite, which is
Oh,
Dustin
yeah.
Hoffman
Yeah.
and Mumbles.
Mumbles, mumbles. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hilarious. Like, let's just wrap it up. In a big whodunit moment in the end, the faceless man actually turns out to be Breathless Mahoney,
Yep.
who is really a Black Widow in this whole situation, trying to gain power over Big Boy and Dick Tracy, but really she wants to bring Tracy along with her. She gives him one last kiss goodbye, they and she dies in his arms after a big shootout.
You know what it also kind of made me think about
Hmm.
watching the dynamic? It was kind of like you've got that character Tess Trueheart and
Yeah.
her actions and what she does, she's always generally true to her heart. So when she sees Breathless Mahoney and Dick Tracy has lipstick on his face after Breathless Mahoney has kissed him, she kind of sees that immediately as like, okay, the writing's on the wall, and she leaves.
Yeah.
And it's like finally Dick Tracy is like, okay, I've got this woman who's like a really good woman who's been
Yeah.
hanging around with me, and I have this crazy lifestyle, and she's never really complained about it, and she's never pushed me on these different things. I kind of effed up with her.
Mm.
And then also with Breathless Mahoney being so like, Dick Tracy, like, I want to be with you kind of vibes. She also comes from a world where every guy she's with is pushing her around, treats her completely like an object. She has
Oh
no
yeah.
idea what real love is.
Oh
Love is
yeah.
ownership. So it's
Right.
like these paradigms of if you love someone and you actually love them, you let them go if you feel like that's just what it's supposed to be, which is what Tess Trueheart does, right? She's like, okay, you know what? I'm letting him go because it's like he wants to do something else. Fine, because I
What I
love him. Then there's Breathless Mahoney, who believes love is actually ownership in some ways.
yeah,
And she's like, I want you for me. I
right.
want you to be mine,
Yeah,
my object, because I have been loved that way.
right.
And I think that was like a really interesting thing to kind of like view when I was taking a step back from it as a dynamic. Now, this is a film with very few female characters. I mean, they're basically the only two, other than a few side women characters, right? And both of these characters are not main characters. They're like side prop characters.
Yeah.
Um,
A thing that stood out to me, speaking of female characters and
yes.
about, those two different perspectives on love, something that stayed with me like my whole life, plus popped out again this time, was when Tess decides she's had enough of Tracy. She doesn't like the lifestyle. She's scared every time he goes out into the field. She wants him to take a desk job, and she just can't handle it. She finally has had enough and she dumps him and she says, let it, like you're saying, set him free and then you'll
Yeah.
know. She goes back and stays at her mother's house. Tess's mother says to Tess, he's torn between his sense of duty and his love and dedication to you. And she says, it takes a lot of patience to love a man like that. And Tess self-reflecting. You have to sort of love people for exactly who they are if you're going to love them. And
Yeah.
and so she accepts that about him, and in the end she makes the right decision because he's dedicated to her. He's not somebody who's, he's choosing the right thing over and over and over again, and so maybe the positives outweigh the negatives, but she has made up her mind, and she is true to her heart, and he ends up being true to his in the end.
Yeah.
Smushy. But and
Yeah.
Madonna's an evil biatch. Just kidding. No. And Breathless Mahoney, you feel bad for Breathless the whole time. You have pity for her. Everyone
Yeah.
does in the movie
Yeah.
because you're right. She has been pushed around these.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this could be made now.
Yes. Exactly. I
Warren Beatty would have Al Pacino slap anybody in a movie for no reason. He's just sort of smacking her around.
yeah, I and it goes back to kind of like the original material.
Yeah.
Like even in comic books in that time, I'm sure it was totally fine to have characters hit women.
Yeah.
Films, James Bond films, I can even think of in Her Majesty's Secret Service. That film, James Bond punches a woman to knock her out so she'll get on a helicopter.
Yeah.
He punches her, she gets knocked out. He passes her to these guys. That was the 60s. So like the concept of like hitting women in film
Yeah.
has been there for a long time and seems like that's a fine thing to do in a lot of cases, like
It's just fine.
and it's obviously very wrong. We don't see, at least in this film, being that it's the 90s, you don't see Dick Tracy hitting
Yeah.
her.
No, no.
You only,
You
or any
see the
women,
bad guy.
you
Yeah.
just see him hitting the bad guys. And then you see the bad guys like pushing her around and stuff.
Yeah.
um could this movie be made today? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of the cast being, let's say, 95% men,
Yeah.
also most of the cast was white.
Oh, yeah. The whole cast is white.
There was not almost anyone of color. Like maybe there was one guy, like maybe
Anybody, and by the way, since they're comics, anybody could be any color they want.
anybody could be any color.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
So,
right? And it was just kind of like watching it, you realize how some films age well. I
yeah.
don't know if this is a film that really aged well.
Well,
The cinematography though alone is very cool to kind of watch. They had some really
Yeah.
interesting shots that were taking place, having the camera angled up, seeing the wide shots of the room. There almost
Yeah.
seemed to be this like callback to a lot of the those like big dance movies.
Yeah.
And they have these shots that are really interesting, like high coming in low. There was just
Yeah.
a lot of cool framing, a lot of cool lighting. The lighting was great. The sets, I think, were really interesting. Obviously, the makeup and the costumes were fabulous.
Yeah, it sort of
Um,
felt a little theatrical, like when you go see a play. It's like a
yes,
set design. It almost feels like a set for stage or something like
yes.
that. Yeah.
So I guess like thinking of this movie and Warren Beatty, who I generally really like as an actor,
Hmm.
and I think he is also a very good director. He directed quite a few of his own films that he was in.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I kind of think it's interesting to think then, like, so that's early 90s, right? Like by the late 90s, he's making
Bullworth?
yes, Bulworth. Bulworth. Now that
That
movie, very
line.
diverse cast, phenomenal
So,
music. I think it's because he probably got some backlash on Dick Tracy. I think Dick
yeah.
Tracy was meant to be a multi-series movie.
Yeah.
I think people were kind of like, why the F did you like it's good,
Yeah.
but like it's not great.
Yeah.
I think he's somebody who could be again, like he's a great actor, he's a great director, he's a great writer. I
Yeah.
think like he probably got some feedback. There was probably legal issues that were
Yeah,
happening.
behind the scenes, the studio didn't want to make it was supposed to be a trilogy. And after the first one, the studio did not want to make the other two.
Yep.
So I think it wasn't received as well as but I think the feedback on this movie from critics was like okay, it was okay. Everybody loves Danny Elfman. The studio put the kibosh on making the other two films, and Warren Beatty actually went into a big legal dispute to try and get the rights back of the second two so
Yep.
that he could make them, but that never happened, probably because Madonna and Warren Beatty, surprise, surprise, ended up breaking up. They did not live happily ever after in a house with a
Yeah.
picket fence.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of a half-baked, you know, half-baked kind of like idea that sort of, I mean, there was sort of it sort of fizzled. It was sort of a fizzle out of a concept that I think was meant to be as big as today's like Marvel series, like a
Totally.
Batman or, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
that
And
didn't happen.
the and I think people's tastes had changed. You
Yeah.
had films, that year that came out, Miller's Crossing, Goodfellas, The Long Walk Home, Unspeakable Acts, Presumed Innocent, Memphis Belle, Arachnophobia, Misery, Tales from the Dark Side had a film come out, Jekyll and Hyde. I think and the film that we're going to be discussing next time, Tremors.
Tremors. That was the same
And
year?
that
Oh,
was the
that's
same
perfect.
year. And
Wow.
so it's kind of
Harsh,
like,
harsh contrast there.
yeah, a harsh contrast, but it also kind of shows you like, I think what people were really, you know, going for at that point, it probably just wasn't this.
Yeah.
It
I
just, it wasn't that. And it did have a big draw. If you were writing a review of this film, how would you feel about the film? Would you give this 10 vinyl records?
I would give this film 8 vinyl records.
Okay, that's high. That's high.
So come be with us next time. Come be
Join
with
us
us
next
next.
time.
Join us next time when we discuss Tremors. Erin's going to take us through Tremors, and I'm going to make faces and be excited about it. And
Perfect.
thanks for coming to the Video and Vinyl Club.
Video and Vinyl Club. Bye bye.
Bye.